It is, yes, we are. Okay, we are live. Nimbula, Nimbula, Bula Binaka, hola, aloha, malolele, talofalava, yeorana, kia ora, with all the beautiful Pacific greetings and welcoming everybody to this very special Talano session with one of my colleagues here at the California State University in Los Angeles, Dr. Sandra Gutieirrez de Jesus. We are here to continue the Talano session in celebrating our Women's History Month. And we are continuing throughout the month of March. And it's been a wonderful month. It started off on a high with me hosting different people that I've invited on my program. And then last week, or the week before that, I invited Dr. Carolyn Dunn, one of our Indigenous professor at the College of Ethnic Studies. And then today we have Dr. Sandra joining us in sharing her story about her own personal journey in her life of living here in the United States, life in connecting her back to her roots in South America, journey as a professor here at our university. And, it's just wonderful that we as women, we wear so many hats. And today, it's a wonderful opportunity that we can sit with our cup of tea or cup of coffee or glass of water or orange juice or whatever that you have next to you to sit and relax and have Sandra join us to tell her story. So a very good afternoon to you, Dr. Sandra.
Thank you so much, Dr. Teresi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody who's listening to us. I'm really excited to be here with Dr. Teresi to share a little bit about who I am, where I come from, and I think most importantly, the women in my life, those women that have made me the woman that I am today, who have really, established that legacy for us as Native women in order to be able to be in the spaces that we are today. So I'm really excited to be here to tell you a little bit about who I am, but also to just talk about the importance of Indigenous women, not only today, not only this month, but, always.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Sandra, because this is a month of reflection, yeah, a month to remember those who have gone before us. And I'm sure both you and I agree that we stand on the shoulders, yeah,
Yeah,
of
definitely.
giants in our community. And I'm sure many giants in our community are women who raised you and I to be who we are today. So, Sandra, would you like just to tell us a little bit about yourself, from your family, who you are and where were you raised, and maybe what schools did you go to when you were a little girl?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, it's such a long story. I was born and raised in the state of Michoacan in Mexico. For those who may not be familiar with the geography in Mexico, Michoacan is a state that is located in Western Mexico. And the area that I'm from is approximately, 4 to 5 hours away from Mexico City. I grew up with my maternal side of the family. I come from a family who has, migrated historically. I am culturally Purepecha, which is one of the indigenous populations in the state of Michoacan. And we always say that we are transnational people. We have migrated historically, we are migrating today, and there is such a large Purepecha population in the United States. So I grew up with my dad being absent because he was in the United States. He migrated at a very early age. So he would go back and forth between the United States and California. So my sister and I would be with my mom. We grew up with my, grandparents in a small Purepecha community in the state of Michoacan. So it was a happy childhood, even though, of course, it was challenging. It was difficult not, having my dad by my side, but I can say that I come from a very, close-knit family. I'm very close with my extended family. So I grew up around my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins. So I think that I was a very loved child. I went to different schools as I was growing up, outside of the community, right? I mostly went to non-native, schools as I was growing up, especially because I would move back between my mother's community and then my dad's community too, which was non-Indigenous. And so I think that I experienced, that discrimination and racism at a very early age, although I can say that it was not as strong as it was when I migrated to the United States. I grew up in a small community that traditionally has dedicated to, many different activities, traditional, farming, fishing. We are located on the shores of a lake, so we have always say that, we are lake peoples, and so we have a close relationship with the water, as well. So I remember growing up, visiting the lake. I remember my family members taking me to the lake at a very early age and seeing the water springs, the fish, those, endemic fauna that we don't see anymore because of the environmental issues that my community has been facing. But I can say that I grew up around really strong women, and that is for sure. And so, from my mother to my aunts to my cousins to my, grandmother, I really grew up in a family that value the work of women, that value the stories, the perspectives of women. And so that was really important to me, because when I migrated to the United States, I really faced a lot of challenges, but I can say that it was sustained by the love, and the work of the women in my family. And that is one of the most important, things that I can say about this story, right? That women have
Mm.
been so important in this process, in this journey. So when I migrated to the United States, I went to different schools. I went to a community college. Eventually, I went to the University of California in Davis, which is where I got my PhD in Native American Studies. And eventually, I went to different areas. I moved back to Michoacan. Then I came back to do a postdoc at the University of Minnesota in Morris in the discipline of Native American and Indigenous Studies.
Mm.
And then eventually I got to Calstate LA in, in the Latin American Studies program, and then Chicano Latino Studies. And now I'm a faculty member in American Indian and Indigenous Studies. So it was a long journey, but I can say that if there was one thing that sustained me throughout this time and the challenges that I faced as an Indigenous migrant woman, was the presence and the love and the strength of the women who were around me, for these processes.
And that's beautiful. Thank you so much for taking us on that journey. And when you mentioned about the lake, I can picture, that lake. It must have evoked a lot of memories to you when you returned to see the lake again when you were traveling from the United States, yeah, back to your home. Um, do you have any memory of being at the lake with your family?
Definitely. So I remember that we would go, not necessarily like every day, but every now and then, when you're a child and then your family tells you, if you don't finish your food, we're not going to take you to the lake, things like that. So, I remember going to the lake, and it was such a beautiful place. And I always talk about this with my students because, I mean, we talk a lot about environmental issues in our classes. And I always tell them about these stories because I remember that every time that we went to the lake, you would turn everywhere and you would see trees all around it, right? So it was so green back then. And I even remember growing up, listening to my mother's stories as well, my, grandparents' stories about the lake. They had the opportunity to see a lake that was clean, right? The water was so transparent. It was so beautiful. They had the opportunity to eat the endemic, fish that provided us with so much nutrients, proteins to survive. And so I still remember seeing some of those fish that we don't have anymore because of the contamination. They have completely disappeared. But I do remember, that my family would bring them to the house when I was a little kid. And, my grandparents, they were, they would always eat them. And so we don't have that anymore. But I think that, I'm really grateful and was really fortunate to be able to have these memories because now that I go back to my community, and I see the lake drying up, I see that we don't have any more water springs, we don't have any more of those fish. Everywhere that you turn to, you see, these agro industries, settle all over the territory that are drying up the lake, that are, cutting up the trees, that are, destroying everything that we have. It's really sad, but I also know and I'm really um, you know, happy, but also inspired to see how women are fighting really strongly for our territories. And that's something that also inspires me.
Ah, that is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Sandra. It makes, us to, be reminded about our indigenous ways of conservation, which I'm sure your ancestors have been applying for over so many thousands of years. And now you're seeing the changes right in your very eyes. Eh?
Mhm.
Um, Now let's talk about stories, because before we started our live, we were talking about storytelling. Storytelling is a key part of our lives as Indigenous people. What story from your life best captures the woman you've become today?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I would say, the story of my mom, which I think, and my own story of migration, because I think all of that is sort of overlapped. And so, especially because I think that I wouldn't be here today if it wouldn't have been for the path that my mom opened, not only for me, I think, but for a lot of women in our communities. Because I remember growing up, I would always see my mom. She was a school teacher. She worked as a school teacher for about 30 plus years, going from community to community, especially in rural indigenous areas in Mexico. She was a school teacher at the elementary level. And I remember like growing up, seeing my mom working, all through the night to do her work. She would always take my sister and I into the classroom with her. And so I think that was my early sort of experience with, teaching and being inside of a classroom, not as a student, right? But seeing it from the other side or perspective, watching my mom teach and going home and watching her prepare her lesson plans for the children. Every time that she would go to rallies, to like protest, to do anything that was related to her, teaching and work, she would always take my sister and I. So I grew up watching that and seeing how strong she was, and how wonderful she was at her job, that, I always thought I really want to be like her. And, like when you're a child, sometimes like you think about, I want to be a doctor and I want to be a lawyer. You want to do all of those things. But I think, the example of my mom really, was really, really powerful in me, that when I saw her, I knew that I wanted to be like her. I knew that I wanted to be as strong as she was. And I think that somehow opened that path for me because, I remember her stories a lot because she was in that first generation of women that left the community to get an education, really, because my mom grew up back in the 1950s and 60s in Mexico. We're from a small community. So at that time, women were not really, supported by their families or the community to get an education. And so she came from a family where she was supported by my grandparents, and my grandfather always talked about education, right? He always, I remember, listening to him many times when I was growing up too, and hearing him say how important education was. And I remember because he died when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I always remember this story because it also was very powerful besides my mom's story. So I remember one time my grandfather was very sick. I was about 10 or 11. And so he had been dealing with cancer for a long time. And so we would always be playing like with my sister and my cousins all around him. And he would always tell us something, right? And so I remember one time he told us, my sister and I, I hope that you girls graduate someday and go to school because this is really, what's going to give you the opportunity to, speak your voice, so that other people do not abuse you, and so that you have, something that will sustain you for the rest of your lives. I want you to be, strong. I want you to get an education, and I hope that I see you one day graduate. And at that time, I think those words didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I was a little kid. I was interested in, like playing around and, around the house. And I wasn't really paying that much attention to what he said. So I just listened, right, attentively. But I don't think those words really made sense until later on in my life. He passed away, a few months after that. And so it was not until I migrated and I started my education that those words and those images of seeing him, sick, but still worried about our future and about our education really made sense. And I understood. And so, when I'm going through a challenging situation, I think about that and I say, wow, his words were so strong and so powerful that, they don't let me give up because I know that, he never gave up. He always wanted to go to school. He never got the opportunity to do so because he grew up in the 1920s and the 1930s in Mexico. Really hard times for a lot of people, especially for indigenous communities. And so he wanted to give those opportunities to his children, and that's why my mom had the opportunity to study as well because my grandfather was so supportive. And in such a sexist community where my mom grew up, my grandfather had a different vision. He wanted something different for his kids, and so he supported all of his children, right? To go to school, to get an education. And in a way, that also impacted me because even though I didn't spend a lot of time with him in this life, I know that he wanted me to, do the same and get an education and be able to defend myself. And so I would say that that's one of the most important stories, and the motivation behind all the things that I do.
Mm, that is wonderful, and I'm sure you carry that memory with you, especially about your grandfather. He had that vision, supported your mom, and now it's you and your sister. Now, let's move to the future. How would you carry that legacy forward?
Yeah, thank you for that question because I think that's really important, right? Because I think that when I got my education and now that I'm a professor, but I'm also doing some other things in the community. I work a lot with community in different projects. I do community radio. I do projects that are specifically related to linguistic revitalization, working with other Native women and Native youth. So I think that is also my responsibility. So, given the fact that, I come from this lineage of really strong, women, but also men who have supported us and who have sustained us, right? Because I think in order to move forward as Indigenous women, as Indigenous people, we need to think about the collective, right? So it's about us, men, women, all of the diverse communities, bodies, faces of our community need to be recognized and centered in these processes for, self-determination, self-government, to live in dignity, right, and respect. And so I think just thinking about those stories and that history, for me, it has been really important to continue doing the work that other women did for me in the past. Because as I mentioned, I wouldn't be here without my mom, without my grandmother, who was, a Native woman who she didn't know how to read, she didn't know how to write, she barely went to school, but she was very strong. Nevertheless, she was so strong that in a way she also opened the path for us to be here. Even though, most of the work that she did it within, the household, sustaining the family. But that's such an important work as well that a lot of the times goes unrecognized. And then my mom carried the legacy, and now I'm carrying the legacy. So yeah, I also want other, women, other girls in my community and beyond to be able to have access to the opportunities and the spaces that I had, and even to have even more access than the access that I had or the opportunities that I had, because being a migrant woman and student, as I think about it, navigating academia in the United States, it was so difficult for me and for my family, because my family was always very supportive, especially my mom, but they didn't really know much about the US education system. So she would always tell me, I support you in all decisions that you make. So everything that you want to do, just know that you're going to have my support. I just don't know how to guide you because I don't speak English. I'm not familiar with the education system. So I'm just going to be there for you. Um, I think that just meeting other women along the way in academia, in my Native American Studies program, now Calstate LA, for me, that has been really important in order to be able to, and navigate this process. And so I also want other students, I want, other women who want to access higher education to have an easier process than the one that I had, because I think it's so important for us Indigenous women to be in this institutional educational spaces in order for us to be able to give back to our communities. Sometimes we think that, and there's a common idea sometimes in our Purepecha communities that, once you go to university and get an education, then that means that you're going to leave the community, then you're going to move away, you're going to leave your traditions and your identity behind. And I think what Indigenous Purepecha women are demonstrating is that it's actually the contrary, that for us women who go into education or law or medicine or, whatever professional field we decide to go into, we're always returning to the community. We're always giving back in so many ways. So I think that, it is so important to, have access to the spaces and these other forms of knowledge so that we can also go back to the community and return what the community has given us.
Wow. I love that contrast there when you said that, you're absolutely right. When we go to the university, they'll be like, oh, yep, she's gone. She won't come back.
Mhm.
I'm really glad what you just said, that representation is so important that when you come into academia, you switch it and then you go back to your people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow. They must be really proud of you, eh, Sandra?
Well, yeah, my sister and I are the first to, graduate college, go to a PhD program. So that was definitely a milestone for my sister and I, but also for my family, being able to access this spaces and to be able to also strengthen our roots, because it's so difficult. It's so difficult once you migrate, finding those connections and that community, that sense of community. And also like, even like graduating, that seems like something that, when I was studying, when I was in the PhD program, for instance, it was such a difficult process for me that I thought about graduation and I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it, but again, I think it was a collective effort. So I can say, the PhD degree is under my name, but in reality, it was a collective effort of
Wow.
everybody around me.
Wow, that is so, so inspiring. So to our women, Bulavinak, everyone who watching us now online, and some of you will watch the replay. I just wanted to encourage you to listen to the story by Dr. Sandra, that if she can do it, you can too. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that is just so, so inspiring to feel that, you didn't do it alone. There were a group of people around you, yeah, who were supporting you, holding your hand, pushing you forward, yeah, and kind of encouraging you and saying, you can do it, Sandra. You can do it. Keep going. We're
Yeah.
here. We are here.
Mhm.
Wow. That is awesome.
Definitely.
And yeah, I'm thinking back to when your mom always take you and your sister to her classroom.
Yeah, as I mentioned, that was such an inspiring, story and experience too. It was so empowering to see her as a woman, just doing her job because, my mom has a really strong personality and voice, and I always admire how, everyone would listen to her, right? And how knowledgeable she was, and how empowered she was of going into the classroom and working with the children, just training and sharing knowledge and community with this new generation of students. But I also remember like every time that we would go out like to the market or to like just run errands, she would come across students that she had like 20 years ago who would still remember her, who would call her by her name. Like, I remember her. I remembered you when I was in your class. I was in fifth grade. I was in sixth grade, and it was so amazing to see how this, adults, right, who had their families, they already had children, they would still remember my mom for not only the work that she did in the classroom, but also for the, the type of human being that she was. And for me, that was really important. So that really inspired me in my career too, because, when I'm with students, I also, want to imprint that legacy, but not only of, sharing this knowledge with them, but just being, caring and offering them a space where they can also, reflect on who they are, offering them a space where they can also, share their knowledges, share their experiences, share their perspectives, and create this different type of community that sometimes we don't really have in academia, because academia can be, dehumanizing sometimes. So I think just, being able to experience that with my mom really provided a model for me to go into the classroom and have that space and be that kind of person to my students.
Wow, that is wonderful. And so, yeah, thank you, Mom. Thank you for being there for Sandra. And again, hearing your story, remembering her, it's such a beautiful, beautiful way to acknowledge
Mhm.
your
Yeah.
mom. Now, going on this path to be where you are now, it's so beautiful to hear, but I'm sure there are barriers along the way that you experienced, in this journey. Now, can you tell us maybe one or two barriers that you experienced and what helped you push through those?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I think maybe I can identify two overall. One of them, in academia, for instance, I already mentioned that, it was such a difficult experience for me as a migrant student, not being very knowledgeable about the education system, about, what I wanted to do initially, because I had a lot of doubts. I thought I wanted to be, and I always thought about, being a professor, being a teacher. But once you migrate, a lot of things change. It always feels like you leave your world behind. And so for me, one of the challenges, as a student, as a woman in academia, has been finding community. And that's something that, occurred since the beginning of my academic journey in college, eventually in the PhD program, just having a space where I could connect with people, that also had similar experiences to those that I had, where I felt that I could share my voice, share my perspectives, share who I was without being, judged perhaps. It was so difficult to navigate also because of the linguistic barriers that I was facing. So
Mm,
just being able to communicate my feelings and communicate my story, communicate also my struggles. I think that was so difficult too. But eventually, I think that I was able to find that community in my PhD program. It was the very first time since, I went to school in the United States that I was able to find people that, had a similar experience to mine, but also people who listened to me and professors that really cared about what I had to say and that really encouraged me. And I think that besides, of course, the women in my life, it was because of the professors that I, encountered, that I met during my PhD program, that I was able to overcome a lot of those, barriers or challenges or even fears that I had about getting an education. Because, as a Mexican, indigenous, migrant woman in the US, you face a lot of challenges related to racism and discrimination. And, I was told several times, I remember one time I was working on an exam and I got 100% right in that exam. And I remember one person telling me, it's not possible, another student in that class, it's not possible for you to get 100% because you're Mexican, right? And Mexican people don't really, you're only, confined to like this, lower kind of, jobs. And that was really hard to see and to experience. But in a way, I also thought, my identity or my origins do not, have nothing to do with the capabilities that I have as a person. And so I think that also sort of, pushed me to do the work that I, started doing because, it was so heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking to see how people had that mentality of, determining people's capabilities based on where you came from. But I think just having the support of people who believed in me and who believed in my capabilities, who believed in the work that I wanted to do, that I was capable of doing, was so important in that process. But I also think more broadly in the work that I do as an Indigenous woman in the community. There are so many challenges that I have faced, that we continue to face. Of course, one of them, the violence that we face in a lot of our community spaces. I mentioned that I do community radio. I have been doing this work for about 9 years or so. And it has been such a long struggle for us women to be able to access decision-making spaces in the community, because as women, right, we're often, ridiculed. We're often, prohibited from, making decisions, from voicing out our opinions sometimes in our community, because, we, according to some of the men who are in those spaces, we don't have the capability of doing so. And so I think that now women are demonstrating that we really have the capability of leadership. We have the capability of decision making, that we can do that work and we can do it very well. And I think that also has been the example that, other women in the community have shown. My mom, for example, was the first woman in my community to ever serve in a communal, government council, right? She was a few years ago, actually 10 years ago, she was part of the communal property council that is in charge of, any related activities to land care and protection. And that was such an important work. And that also opened the space for other women in the community to start going to our assemblies, to start going to the meetings, to, not be as fearful when, speaking up in these spaces, and to be able to make decisions. So I think that even though there have been challenges associated with sexism, with, violence, with, discrimination, racism, I think that again, I have been able to overcome that due to, the women that I am surrounded by.
Man, thank you so much for sharing those personal stories, and the challenges, yeah, that you faced along the way. It's not easy,
Mhm.
not easy, because a lot of the topics that you mentioned there was, quite some of the issues that we often see now, particularly here in the United States. Um, but I'm glad that you have that support system around you, that keeps you going,
Mhm. Yeah.
Sandra. And, my next question is on using your voice. And I'm so glad you mentioned about the community radio. That is really awesome. Would that be one of the ways you create change for other women in your community?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's such an important platform. I think that we have right now. This is a project that emerged about um, 9 years ago in the community. And what's really particular about this community radio, which is one of the, few community radios that we have in this particular region that I'm from, is that it is the only community radio that is led by Native women. So our team is entirely, structured, comprised of women in the community. And so I have had the privilege of working with a wonderful group of women for about 9 years or so. And for me, that has been such an important important platform because it is a platform that allows us to be seen in the community, to be able to literally use your voices, use our voices to, share, to, organize, to, also like, share our memories, think about or share about our dreams or, hopes for the future as well. And so that's such an important platform because, as I mentioned, in my community, we have had such a difficult time accessing decision-making processes. And so I think of the radio as a political space for us to, have those voices out there and to be able to say, what are the things that we like? What are the things that we don't like? What are the things that we want to change in the community and how we want to do it? Because if there's one thing that I have, understood and realized about this community radio project and work that I've done over the past 9 years is that number one, it is such an important platform for women to share our voices. But number two, it is also a very important platform for us to organize. So it's not just about what we say, right, during the radio programming, but also what happens behind that process and how we organize behind that, community radio, because it has created such an important network of collective organization that, perhaps, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined that, but now it is happening. And so the fact that we are able to speak with elders, to speak with children, with youth who are coming to the radio. I even remember like one time that we were, programming some community shows, and one of the elders mentioned we were approaching him to talk about in the radio about migration, and he said, I'm not sure, like, like I don't know what to share or I don't know what to say. Is this really important? And we were like, yes, like, what you have to say is really important because, sometimes in the community, especially the elders think, what I share isn't really that important, right? Because maybe what's important is in the books. And I think, no, what's important is in our community because there are so many things that are not documented. There's so much knowledge that we have in our community that we really have to share it. We have to document it because once an elder dies, it's like an entire encyclopedia of knowledge that goes away with that person. And I think it's just so important to also use the radio as a way of documenting the knowledge of the elders, especially the women, the women elders in the community, who are coming. And I remember in one of the first radio programs that we did many years ago, the very first time that people, especially moment, right? Because they never imagined about listening to their own voices through radio and listening to their own stories and even their own songs, because some of them even sang for this, community programming that we did for some cultural events that we had in our archive for a community too. It's a living archive. It has our voices, our, our dreams, our memories. And so and just being able to have access to that space is so important. It has been such a wonderful experience being sheltered by all these women in the community who I work with, and they really have provided that support network, not only as part of the community radio that I do, but also in other moments of my life. They have been my shelter. They have sustained me through so much. And so I'm so grateful for doing this work, but also to show other, young women in the community that they can do it too, because I've heard from other, women in the radio too, we have had these reflections every now and then when we come together and think about this trajectory with the community radio. And I think if there's one thing that this project and this work has shown us is that we can be so many things as women. We can be mothers, we can be daughters, we can be wives, we can be professionals, we can be, everything that we want to be, because in the community, we as women play so many roles. We are land defenders, water protectors, bearers of culture, and sustainers of the community. And a lot of the times, those roles are, erased. And so I think it's so important to recognize that and to bring visibility to all of the work that women do in the community.
Wow. That is so wonderful. I'm so glad that there's a lot of women that are watching and listening in today. So to all our ladies listening to our talk story, thank you for joining us. Milika Nambo, Safira Ogden, thank you to all the ladies and all the men as well. So thank you, Ben Vermbalavu, to all our men out there. Thank you for supporting all our women this month. We're celebrating our Women's History Month. And today, my guest is Dr. Sandra, who is here to share her story from her part of the world in South America and connecting her life to the United States. So it's such a pleasure to have you here with us, Dr. Sandra. And wow, you've raised some really, really important points and making your community radio such a very important archive, yeah, of documenting voices. And I really like what you said there that when an elder dies, yeah, an encyclopedia burns down, or sometimes they say a library burns down.
Mhm.
So you're absolutely right. And recording their voices and stories are just as important now. Yeah, there's that
Yeah.
urgency.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes when we want to, do research on our community's history, we say, there isn't anything out there that's being documented, right? So, like, I cannot find the history of my community, but the history sometimes is within our own community and the memories of the elders, of, the people who hold these memories. And so that's something that I really care about, right? Because I think about my own community where we don't have a lot of elders left. And many of them have, passed away. And, I have some of my elders in my family still. And I
Mm,
think I always listen to the stories that they tell us about, how life used to be and, what they remember about the community, what they remember
mm,
about the lake, what they remember about, everything. And so it's so important, and nothing of it has been,
mm,
written or documented in any other way. So, when I think about these technologies that now we have access to as indigenous communities, I think about, it is so important to use them in order to benefit our community and to document our history and to be able to share it with our younger generations. Like I was thinking about the lake. I have these memories, but unfortunately, there are younger generations that will not be able to see that lake. Who knows if the lake is going to exist 50 years from now?
mm.
But I think it's just so important to, to document what we can, especially in these cases where the integrity, the survival of our territory is threatened.
Ah, thank you so much for that. Your work is incredible, and I'm so glad that you're on my platform now because I'd love to, invite you back again. In some of our events that are coming up. I know we have the Native American History Month in November, and then we also have the World Indigenous Day. So I'll definitely aim to, have us hear more about your community radio. I find
Thank
that
you.
such a really beautiful avenue, yeah, to have their voices heard but also recorded for
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
future. And speaking about the future, my last question to you today, Dr. Sandra, is what future do you hope women and girls will inherit, and what steps do you believe will help us get there?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And thinking about the future is so important because as Indigenous people, we reveal the past, right? We reaffirm the present, but we also, birth a future. We reclaim a future, especially in the context of, colonial violence and, everything that we have experienced and continue to experience today, all these forms of violence and erasure, especially as Native women. And just, going back to the beginning, right? And the legacy of the important women in my family, but also thinking about Indigenous women more broadly and how historically sometimes the voices of women have been erased from the historical records. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean that we are not there. We are not here because we continue to be here. And historically, Indigenous women have demonstrated that we have been at front line of defense, protecting our territories, protecting our communities, and thinking about the work that I do also with other women in community, with other young women and girls. I just want them to, be able to have access to all of the opportunities that they want, right? To be able to decide for themselves. I think it all connects also to this, spirit of self-determination that we as Indigenous people have, and how important it is for women in our community, because I think that as Indigenous people, we talk, especially in the context of my community, I've seen people talk a lot about, self-determination and autonomy and what it means for the community. But, when we talk about self-determination without talking about Indigenous women, without talking about or bringing in the voices and perspectives of Indigenous women, then we're not really talking about self-determination and all
Mhm.
that it encompasses. We're not really, respecting the spirit of Indigenous autonomy, of
Mhm.
Indigenous sovereignty. And so for me, when I think about the future, I think about women participating in all of this, processes and spaces within our community and beyond, for Indigenous women to be respected, right? To live dignified lives where Indigenous women can, decide for ourselves, to be able to have that full capacity to decide over our own bodies, over our own future, over our own, you know, uh, everything that we want to do. I think that is so, so important. And as I mentioned, it's not about just women or just about men, but it's about the collective. But in order to really think about a collective future, because I'm a firm believer that, the future must be collective, right? Not individual, but, collective. And so when we think about collectivity, the voices of women need to be there. And I hope that, girls, young women, can make those decisions. They have access to all the opportunities, all the spaces that they, want to have, without being, discriminated against, without facing violence. I hope that we as women, also, get justice, because that
Mhm.
is so difficult to do. And in my classes, I always talk about, justice and how do we seek justice and reparations. But I think, when we think about that process, there is a very first step, and that has to be the recognition of the challenges and the violence that we Indigenous women face in multiple spaces, because, what isn't named does not exist. We really have to name it. There has to be a recognition of the challenges that we as Indigenous women face, but
Mhm.
also we need to organize. And I think that is so important. And that's what, projects like community radio or projects like, I'm thinking about many different projects that Native women do. Like I'm thinking about textile cooperatives. I'm thinking about like this economic development projects that Indigenous women who work the land, for example, are able to do. Like all of those spaces, like even like within education, right? So I'm thinking about all of the spaces where Indigenous women can organize and how
Mhm.
important that is, and how important those spaces are for Indigenous women. And so for us, I think that another dream would be to have those spaces so that we can come together as Native women, where we can organize, where we can freely share with each other how we feel, what we think, what we dream for the future. That is so important to be able to have those spaces. And so if we don't have them, it is so important to create them. And so
Mhm.
that's what I'm, hoping for. I don't know if there's a, just one answer or a correct answer to that, but I think just the recognition and the organization is so, so important for Native women.
Wow, I really love the fact that you mentioned collective, yeah. So the future to you is collective, us working together, and that truly reflects the way we as Indigenous people work. Yeah, we always that collective that make things happen, and you're doing it, and you're telling a story today of all the collective support you had from when you were a little girl growing up, and all the way to UC Davis, and with all the beautiful universities that you went to, and now you're here, in Los Angeles. And for the listeners also listening in, both of us are teachers here. Just wonderful to hear how our students enjoy you, Sandra, in the class, and I think that's a beauty of us as Indigenous people. We bring that indigeneity into our classroom, right? And that's a blessing.
Mhm.
And that's a
Yeah.
blessing. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I'm really enjoying that time with my students, being able to share their stories and also listen, hear from them what they have to say because they have so many beautiful stories, and it's just being able to hold that space for them to listen to what they think, what they say, because the younger generations are the seed of the future, right? They're the future community members, and just listening to their voices is so important too.
Wow, that is beautiful. Wow. Sandra, it's been wonderful, to have you on my platform today. I was looking forward to hear your story because I know both of us run very busy lives, and it's wonderful that we can put 1 hour aside today from our busy schedule just to sit and talk. And what a wonderful way to bless so many other women that are listening right now and those who will listen also later to our recording. So before we wrap up today, if you have one advice or any sharing or any phrase or any proverb, whatever that moves you in this very moment to kind of maybe bless another sister that is listening to us right now, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so I
Okay,
back
Nibula, Nibula.
to the legacy of I'm not sure if you have
Maybe
I
you
think
can
I'm
start
having
again. You were
some
breaking
issues
off
with
there.
my connectivity.
Yeah, your internet. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
so
can
can you
start
hear
again
me
on
already?
your last advice. Yes.
Yeah, so for my so just saying that goes, let's all work, also the collective work of women, right? Because what we do as women, we're doing it for, as a woman, right? What I do as a woman, I'm doing it for all of the women out there. So I think that is so important. And what the goals, the achievements of what other women do and attain, that those are also my my victory.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra, for being here and sharing those beautiful words with our audience. And I've had a few of the ladies saying hi. Thank you so much for those of you who been greeting Dr. Sandra and I. Safaira from state of Washington, those of you who are joining in from Fiji and from the Pacific. On behalf of Dr. Sandra and I, we just want to wish all of you a wonderful Women's History Month. And I'm sure that each of us have been empowered from the stories that Dr. Sandra shared with us today. Dr. Sandra, you have a wonderful afternoon and all the very best for the rest of the week.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tracy. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
All right. Okay. Take care. Bye bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you so much to our audience watching in today, wherever you're logging in from. It's been a wonderful hour of chatting to Dr. Sandra. This month, I'll be inviting different colleagues of mine who are teachers here in the United States. Many of them who have indigenous backgrounds, whether they can come and share the story with us, so we can hear from them, listen to their stories, and we hope that their stories will also empower you wherever you are listening in from. So, from me and many of us here in the United States, wishing you all the very best wherever you are in any part of the world you're listening in from. Pinakavakalevu from us, au sana vakumwadi alivike muni ni mwade toka. Binaka.